My story is titled 5th September 2019. And this is because on 5th September 2019, I spent an evening as a telephone operator routing calls to and from Kashmir. After imposing the most severe communications blackout in the region on August 4th, the Indian government had partially restored landlines, particularly office landlines. 69 lakh Kashmiris finally had some contact with the outside world, but there was a caveat. The ISD facility on these landlines was barred, which meant I served as the link between a dozen families huddled in a conference room about half the size of this room and their relatives across the world, all of whom hadn't spoken to them in over a month. So I connected daughters in Kuwait to their widowed mothers, aching to hear their voice, brothers in Australia to siblings they hadn't heard from in weeks. But while these moments were beautiful, in that cramped room where every conversation was invariably a public one, and where everyone around you could hear what you were listening to, there were voices that were missing. Of boys who loved boys across borders, of trans men who only knew that one other trans man they met at a conference in Delhi many years ago, of every single queer person who had to find love and friendship and acceptance outside the families they were born in. Because you see, at a time where every phone call was rationed like gold, what excuse could a lesbian woman give to speak to her friend when all these family members were having these super important conversations? And in that room where every conversation was a public one, what words could you use except for "how are you"? Because "I love you" would simply not be acceptable. And the wife could tell her husband that she loved him and that she missed him, but this woman could only ask "how are you?" There was then, as there is now, it's been 174 days since the internet was shut off. It started with 2G internet access, where you can access a lot of things, including GeoChat. A deafening silence that enveloped the entire region. And this silence hit LGBTQ plus Kashmiris the hardest, robbing them of a few safe spaces where they could be themselves. Because for those of us who are queer, I think Anish's story and other stories that have narrated this make it abundantly clear. The internet is the only place for you to learn that you are not alone. The mobile phone, the only device that gives you the privacy to be yourself when you are not in surroundings that are not safe for you to come out in. And snatching away both leaves us caged to the mercy of those who reject us for who we are. And our history was the story of missing voices, right? Here voices were being erased in front of me. There were queer voices that were being completely cut off, silently, unnoticed by everyone around, and few had taken time to think about this erasure. And in the larger conversation, an important conversation about saving the Constitution and democratic rights, there were a lot of human stories that were simply missing. Unfortunately, voices of resistance were preaching to their own choir. There were speeches on respecting the Constitution, protecting diversity in the same echo chambers. Voices supporting the move, however, supporting the application of 370 and this internet blackout, were more strategic. Like marketing agencies for Coca-Cola or Pepsi, they had suddenly started reaching out to new target demographics. Suddenly you had leaders saying that what had happened in Kashmir was a progressive move. They said, fake news alert, that Ambedkar had refused to draft Article 370 of the Constitution and walked out anyway. They said that women's rights were being trampled upon by Article 370 when in reality it was Article 35A. And they said that removing Article 370 would allow LGBTQ plus Kashmiris to avail of the same benefits that they had in the rest of the country. Now this was patently untrue. The Supreme Court verdict, the same 377 verdict that many in this room have fought for, applied just as much to J&K because the High Court of Jammu and Kashmir comes under the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of India. That did not stop the misinformation. And so at that time, I decided that it was important to speak out against this. Immediately after, I realized that this was tricky. For the longest time, my work in Kashmir had been very separate from my work in queer rights. for the past 7 years I've been going in and out of Srinagar. I was not very sure that I could go back into the valley as an out and proud gay man, and I wasn't really sure what the response would be then. But at this point, when these two identities were intersecting as viscerally as they were then, and when that anger was boiling in a manner that was making me furious at all that was happening around, I decided to speak up and write out. And so I wrote a piece on this, which I sent across to the Times of India in a fit of rage, which actually connected me to Mahawat Das at the Times at the time. I said that for queers in Kashmir, there is no gay liberation. I did not know that they would publish this article on Sunday below Shobha Day's piece. And I woke up one Sunday morning, I'm a late riser, to several calls and thousands of solid notifications, because that's one of the side effects of being next to Shobha Day. People actually read what you're saying. And that's when I got terrified. I said, this is not just being printed in Bombay, this is being printed nationally, this is also being printed in a place where everybody can read it. And lo and behold, it has my name and photograph attached to it. And I said, what are we going to do about this now? And I said, let me stick with this. And I said, let me see what are the prospects of solidarity that are open at such a time. And after the initial trolling that happened on the internet, where I was asked to go to Pakistan, I was like, please give me a visa, I will go tomorrow. I was told all sorts of things, how I should be like drawn, hanged, strung, and put on a public square for mass execution. This is the vanilla stuff. Something magical started to happen. Friends from Kashmir started calling up. And they said, we really enjoyed reading this piece. And this was something we hadn't considered. More importantly, people across the queer community started calling up and sharing the piece. And said, we never really thought about Kashmir in this light, because at a time when all of us are being bombarded with information, with so many things that we're struggling against, it's become almost impossible to connect to something unless we can relate to it. And in this process, queerness almost became, and this story became, an act of translation. And in this, it was a translation not of words, but of movements, wherein one movement found a vocabulary to understand the other movement. And where one set of people caring about another set of people led to the alternative happening as well. Now, it's not easy to stand up for queer rights in Kashmir, as I'm sure you're aware, but you had a bunch of folks starting to speak up about this, those who are not in Kashmir posting about this on the internet. A lot of queer folks posting about this as well. Soon after, you had the Trans Act that was passed by the Indian Parliament. I'm sure you all know that the transphobic Trans Act has been one of the most horrifying things to have been passed in the history of modern Indian politics, because it tramples upon trans rights while pretending to protect them. And while 377 was a colonial hangover and we could blame the British for it, this is a uniquely Shuddh-Desi Indian connection and creation that we are solely responsible for. At the Trans Act protests, you saw Kashmiris come out on the streets in New Delhi. At Delhi Pride, you saw Kashmiris hitting the streets. And suddenly you saw that just one small intervention, because we live in very tiny echo chambers and bubbles, right? I think the queer echo chamber, all of us know all the events that are happening across the country. Everyone who's doing activism on Kashmir knows every other activist on Kashmir in the country. These were two echo chambers, fairly self-sustaining and self-sufficient. Then it suddenly started speaking to each other. As the months have gone by, I don't need to tell you, there have been more and more things that we've gotten to get outraged about. And the beauty of what's happening today is that these echo chambers have started speaking to each other. Just as Kashmiri activists were talking to queer activists, today Dalit activists are talking to trans activists, are talking to Muslim activists, are talking to differently abled activists. And all our echo chambers that we've been told were insignificant, we've been told were irrelevant, we've been told were not worthy of wasting our time on, are becoming powerful tools, because the only way to fight totalitarianism is fragmentation. And when there are multiple heads, a multi-headed hydra, it's much harder to chop off our movements. And in this process, I think a beautiful lesson for all of us, and a beautiful lesson that I learned that day, was that queerness for me had become a process of translation. And today, the reason I was late and I missed some of the initial talks, and I told Darshan I would be here a little late, is because this magic continued happening at a protest against the infamous Jair Bolsonaro, our chief guest for Republic Day tomorrow, who has said that if he saw two men kissing on the street, he would beat them up. He should stay for Bombay Bride. And there, Ari was connected to the Amazon, was connected to queer rights, was connected to conversations around rape, because believe it or not, fascists and power tend to divide all of us across various identity lines. So they unite us in more ways than one. And in this process, I think as we move forward, these echo chambers starting to speak to another, our movements starting to learn from another, the art that we create starting to speak to one another, is something that spells more light for us than any regime change or law change or government change. Because it shows that we're starting to conduct this sensitization, that we're starting to learn and love from each other at a grassroots level. And I think 5th September 2019 for me was the beginning of that journey for me. And I cannot wait to see what that beginning of that journey will be for so many of you in this room today. Thank you very much.